Aboleths are gigantic fish-like amphibians. They continue to grow throughout their lives, with some incredibly ancient specimens reaching truly enormous sizes. Their appearance is akin to a peculiar eel, featuring a long cylindrical body with tails at one end, 2 fins near the head, and another along the back. Their mouths resemble lampreys, equipped with serrated, jawless teeth. Typically, they display orange-pink underbellies and sea-green topsides. Positioned a short distance behind the head are 4 lengthy tentacles, 2 emerging from opposite sides on the top, and 2 more mirrored on the underbelly. Their heads take on a roughly triangular shape, sporting a spherical, somewhat beak-like nose, above which sits 3 eyes stacked atop one another. Tendrils and several shorter tentacles hang from the underside of the head, while 4 blue-black orifices, secreting slime, line the bottom of their bodies. Their blood is thick and green, like sap. Respiring through a thick, gray, mucus-like substance coating their bodies, they exude this substance from 4 pulsating organs along their body as they move. Deprived of the ability to secrete this slime, an aboleth will suffocate whether submerged in water or dwelling on land. Hence, aboleths must maintain this mucus. When out of the water, their membrane-like skin rapidly dries, leading them into a state of suspended animation known as long dreaming, deemed a fate worse than death among aboleths. During this process, the hindered aboleth forms a tough, waterproof membrane. However, if punctured, this membrane results in liquid loss, often leading to the aboleth's demise. They do not succumb to old age, thus they persist indefinitely unless met with violence or disease. Aboleths possess formidable psionic abilities. They have the ability to excrete a thick gray fluid akin to mucus, which triggers a dreadful transformation in air-breathing creatures unfortunate enough to come into contact with it. This fluid covers the victim's skin into a membrane, enabling them to breathe underwater and altering their consciousness into that of a mindless servant. This allows aboleths to maintain slaves, known as aboleth servitors, whom they dominate and control through telepathic means. Only the most powerful aboleths can achieve this, typically through a potent ritual. Another peculiar aspect of aboleths is their memory. Each aboleth is born with a racial memory, inheriting the collective memories of its ancestors. Additionally, they assimilate the memories of those they consume. They are stored within a continually expanding part of their brain, which extends down their back as they age. They take pleasure in immersing themselves in the vivid memories of their forebears, and during idle moments, they may even relive segments of their ancestors' lives. Aboleths reproduce essentially as hermaphroditic fish, laying approximately 1 to 3 eggs every 5 years. These eggs gestate for the same duration before hatching into fully developed aboleths. Although these young aboleths are functionally adults, they typically remain under their parents' guidance for about a decade, unquestioningly obeying them before venturing out on their own. They typically exhibit both extreme cruelty and exceptional intelligence, rendering them among the most formidable adversaries in the multiverse. Possessing a unique genetic memory, they are born fully conscious, inheriting the complete recollections of all their ancestors, thus making even the youngest aboleth a profoundly lethal predator. Despite their ferocity, they are cognizant of their vulnerabilities and refrain from attacking foes on land if they perceive the situation as disadvantageous. As a race, they are entirely self-centered, viewing themselves as among the earliest beings in existence and claiming dominion over all reality. They harbor a particular disdain for terrestrial creatures. Their unease towards the equally powerful Mind Flayers partly stems from their lack of knowledge about the origins of that race. Though often detached from human affairs, they do not hesitate to kill or manipulate any unfortunate mortals who cross their path. Their society diverges significantly from that of more familiar races, primarily due to their shared racial memory and inherently bizarre psyches. Some aboleths organize into clusters called broods, overseen by powerful leaders known as overseers. These broods often include aboleth servitors or other minions, such as the Kuo-Toa, who occasionally serve the aboleths. Unlike many other beings, they do not worship gods. While they acknowledge the existence and power of deities, their memories span back to a time before modern gods were revered, recalling the birth and often the demise of such gods within their own lifetimes. They do not concern themselves with an afterlife, viewing death as a failure and aspiring to live indefinitely. However, they hold a certain level of respect, bordering on reverence, for the formidable beings known as the Elder Evils. As with many anomalous beings, they originated in the Far Realm. However, ages ago, a considerable number of them migrated from that distant realm to the prime material plane, where they made their home in the Underdark. This subterranean realm became the primary habitat for most Aboleths on Toril, though they can also be encountered in other locations, often haunting ancient ruins, deep lakes, or abandoned temples. Aboleth settlements are expansive cities characterized by strange and otherworldly architecture, typically situated deep underwater. One such settlement is the Shape of Water, located in the Glimmer Sea of the Underdark. The historical accounts concerning Aboleths are notably ambiguous. These ancient beings reportedly utilized their newly evolved life forms to construct expansive underwater empires and established a great aquatic civilization. The collapse of this empire is subject to varied interpretations. Some historical narratives attribute the decline to divine intervention, wherein the deities intervened to liberate mortals from servitude, while also rectifying their loss in worshippers. Alternatively, other sources suggest that the empire's downfall was due to the Aboleths' inherent disinterest, exacerbated by their unique relationship with memory. This capacity extends to acquiring memories from consumed beings, thereby enabling Aboleths to dominate other creatures mentally. Periods of inactivity are common among Aboleths as they engage deeply with these acquired memories, potentially neglecting their own administrative duties, which perhaps contributed to the empire's gradual disintegration. Presently, Aboleths are predominantly located in the Underdark, specifically within its deepest realms, alongside other formidable creatures such as mind flayers and deep dragons. Despite their preference for aquatic environments, they are not confined to water and can migrate to other bodies of water. They are classified as amphibious, however prolonged exposure outside of water can induce a coma-like state until the Aboleth is re-immersed in the new body of water. Aboleths, when compelled to traverse terrestrial environments, employ their tentacles for locomotion. These appendages are not only instrumental for their movement, but also serve as formidable weapons. Given their capacity to transport their substantial mass, it is evident that their tentacles can deliver powerful strikes. Although they command their enslaved beings to assist in their movement, such creatures are typically also aquatic, and this method of transport can rapidly deplete their number of servants. In defensive situations, they prefer subjugation over annihilation. Their tentacles, when engaging an adversary, secrete a mucus that facilitates this enslavement process, particularly effective in aquatic settings where the slime can form dense clouds around them. Utilizing psionic illusions, Aboleths often camouflage these environments as enticing, trapping unsuspecting creatures with these slime-laden traps for enslavement or consumption. Theoretically, they aspire to restore their ancient empire, though prevailing narratives depict them as often curmudgeonly and lethargic, favoring the contemplation of their memories over active conquest. Their disdain extends to younger species and deities alike, rooted in ancient grievances and a collective memory that predates other races' foundational discoveries. This animosity colors their interactions, making them resistant to worship or other types of reciprocal relationships, opting instead for pure domination. Occasionally, they may engage in less oppressive interactions with their followers, but such arrangements are typically short-lived, abandoned at the onset of inconvenience or disinterest. Despite attempts to venerate them as deities, engaging with Aboleths in this manner is fundamentally futile. These creatures typically exhibit no interest in reciprocal or reverential relationships. Instead, they're likely to subjugate any would-be followers, compelling them into servitude. While some Aboleths might temporarily tolerate less oppressive associations with their adherents, are temporary arrangements with the goal of mental domination. The only entities that Aboleths truly hold in any higher esteem are the enigmatic figures known as the Elder Evils, which they believe to be their progenitors. The floating city of Xxiphu, came from the far realm many eons ago, but crashed into the ocean. It re-emerged during the Spell Plague. The native Aboleths of Toril were initially alarmed by the reappearance of the ancient city and launched attacks on the new Aboleths residing within it. However, with time, both factions of Aboleths managed to coexist in an uneasy peace, although many of the Aboleths native to Toril kept their distance. Xxiphu stands as a towering obelisk adorned with glyphs and tentacles extending from its walls, enveloped in a perpetual storm as it traverses the skies. The glyphs etched onto the obelisk's surface depicts a myriad of interconnected images in constant flux. The ever-changing inscription holds a significance too alien for mortal comprehension, risking sanity for those who attempt to decipher its evolving message. The very presence of Xxiphu distorts reality in its vicinity, intermittently birthing aberrations from the far realm into the world. In 1396, the Aboleths inhabiting Xxiphu coerced many Kuo-Toa nations into their service. Shortly thereafter, Maliana, a powerful entity, attempted to relocate Xxiphu to the citadel of the Outer Void on the fringes of the Feywild to access the living gate to the far realm. However, this was unsuccessful. By 1429, Xxiphu returned from its failed venture to the citadel of the Outer Void and reappeared in the sky above the Sea of Fallen Stars. As of 1479, Xxiphu could be observed hovering over the sea, typically in close proximity to Akhanul. The primary aim of this new so-called Abolethic Sovreignty is to unlock the Far Manifold using the Key of Stars to open the gate to the Far Realm and release their masters into the world. They also display a significant interest in the Spell Plague, actively searching for and studying plague lands across Faerun. Additionally, they seek to harness the power of the primordial Maegara the Inferno, creating the feared Symphony of Madness for this purpose. Many living creatures are abducted by the Aboleths for their ambitious experiments aimed at enhancing the Symphony of Madness. This was accomplished by what the Aboleths called the Choir, a collective of plague-altered beings who emitted a telepathic melody spanning from Neverwinter to Helm's Hold. Empowered by spell plague energies channeled by the Aboleths through the cauldron of blue fire, the choir subjected potential members to rigorous trials, resulting in their transformation into unrecognizable abominations. Functioning as a concentrated beam of spell plague energy, the choir's song could manipulate both stone and flesh through subtle harmonious adjustments, distorting reality in manners comprehensible only to aberrant minds. Utilizing the Hex Locus, the sovereignty extended the symphony's reach beyond its natural boundaries. Exposure to the symphony induced horrific nightmares, mitigated only by proximity to magical items that were crafted and sold, known as Dream Thief dolls. Prolonged exposure risked transforming individuals into spell-scarred or plague-altered beings. Directed at specific targets, the symphony could ensnare minds, rendering them obedient thralls, or in extreme cases, mutilating them into foul spawn under the sovereignty's control. Xxiphu serves as a mobile city, enabling the Abolethic Sovreignty to operate throughout all of Faerun. Nonetheless, their efforts are primarily concentrated in the Sea of Fallen Stars region near Akhanul, as well as in the Underdark beneath Neverwinter. They exercise complete dominance over the city of Oleth. The Aboleths belonging to this nation differ significantly from the typical ones found on Toril. These sovereignty Aboleths are much older and possess distinct thought patterns compared to their Torilian counterparts. Generally, Torilian Aboleths tend to avoid or even oppose those from the sovereignty, with some believing they are actually the ancestors of their own kind. This distinction is particularly notable among the sovereignty's Aboleths operating in Neverwinter, as exposure to the spell plague has plague-changed many of them, rendering them even more alien than their counterparts within the sovereignty. Despite this transformation, the Aboleths of Neverwinter wield greater power than their peers as a result. In their clandestine activities, the Abolethic Sovreignty utilizes the Symphony of Madness to subtly manipulate humanoids, effectively turning them into adept spies and sacrificial pawns without arousing suspicion. The remainder of the sovereignty's servants comprise aberrant creatures, including foul spawns, Grix, Grell, Kuo-Toa, Krakens, Mind Flayers, and Nothics, alongside plague-changed beings resulting from their mad experiments. Kuo-Toa, alternatively referred to as gogglers and menfish, inhabit the Underdark, characterized as a debased, amphibious race with a tendency towards warm-bloodedness. They possess enigmatic minds, harboring sinister secrets, and often plagued by mental instability. These creatures perceive realities beyond the grasp of others, worshipping deities born of their fervent belief rather than tangible existence. Kuo-Toa typically stand around the height of a human and weigh approximately the same. Despite their somewhat stout physique, their limbs, both arms and legs, are slender and agile, terminating in broad, partially webbed hands and feet. Each appendage boasts 3 primary digits and 1 opposing digit at its tip. Their heads resemble bullets, reminiscent of fish, featuring sharp teeth and a pair of large silver-black eyes capable of independent movement to observe their surroundings. Their bodies are adorned with gray scales, with male individuals exhibiting yellowish undertones that shift in pigmentation according to their emotional state. Anger may manifest as dark red hues, while fear might render their scales a ghostly white. A layer of slippery slime covers their rubbery skin and piscine scales, lending their bodies a glistening appearance. Typically eschewing conventional attire due to discomfort caused by their slime, they instead opt for leather straps to carry their belongings, although some may opt for armor crafted from seashells. Accessories crafted from bone, shell, and gems adorn their bodies, adding to their unique aesthetic. A faint odor of decaying fish emanates from their bodies consistently. Kuo-Toa are deeply suspicious and prone to duplicity, often betraying trust for personal gain as long as they believe they can get away with it. They exhibit a readiness to report suspected family members for crimes to community authorities, leading to their characterization as cruel monsters by many other races, though this perception is not entirely accurate. The mental oppression inflicted upon them by other races exacerbates the simplicity of their minds, resulting in widespread madness among their population. While not inherently evil, the common Kuo-Toa lack the willpower to oppose the ruling elites within their repressive theocracy. Although the ruthless rulers among them often conform to the monstrous stereotype, a significant portion of their populace, approximately half, aligns with neutral evil tendencies. The majority, however, primarily conform to societal norms out of fear of abuse and peer pressure rather than exhibiting the same zeal for cruelty. These common Kuo-Toa tend towards neutrality, with some occasionally displaying good tendencies. Moreover, when removed from the confines of their societies, Kuo-Toa individuals may adopt philosophies such as pacifism. They are amphibious beings, equally adept at navigating underwater as they are on land. The slime their skin produces serves them well, offering partial protection against poison and facilitating escape from most attempts at restraint. Their remarkable monocular vision enables them to detect invisible or ethereal creatures in motion, although their effectiveness above ground diminishes due to their time spent in the Underdark. The psychic assaults from the Illithids drive the Kuo-Toa to madness, but unintentionally lead to another consequence. In their deranged state, they fabricate deities to shield themselves from constant threats. The collective subconscious belief of numerous Kuo-Toa can actually manifest these entities into reality. This latent power allows them to draw upon their faith in these beings, granting them access to a form of divine power. The strength of their conviction directly correlates with their abilities, with certain priests capable of invoking supernatural phenomena. Collaboration between 2 priests can produce effects like generating lightning bolts. Perilous aspect of the Kuo-Toa is the contagious nature of their madness. Whether due to their minimal mental faculties or inherent weakness of will, the initial breakdown of the Kuo-Toa's mind holds a 10% chance of inducing a similar episode in nearby individuals. Though the madness typically remains temporary for anyone beyond the initial victim, it presents a significant threat. Failure to swiftly contain or quell the madness can lead to its rapid spread throughout the community, plunging it into chaos and potentially resulting in the liberation of slaves and the demise of crucial leaders. Kuo-Toa warriors lacking access to divine powers rely on martial skill and cunning to excel in combat. Often these individuals are skilled in martial arts or rogue tactics, employing strategies such as drowning unsuspecting adversaries, swift knife movements to incapacitate foes, applying adhesive substances to their weapons, and employing various other underhanded techniques. Even many priests incorporate regular combat training into their routines to enhance their effectiveness in battle. While capable of using their teeth in combat, they typically wield weapons like spears and shields against their enemies. Utilizing slave labor, they often employ nets, harpoons, and pincer staves to capture foes. Additionally, they possess the ability to secrete an adhesive oil, which they apply to their shields, causing weapons that strike them to become ensnared. Their societies function as oppressive feudal theocracies, governed by a so-called Blibdoolpoolp, or priest king, alongside 9 Org-Poolgupan, also known as priest dukes. Together, these priest dukes form the Sunken Council, a religious governing body wielding complete authority over the populace. Each council member oversees a distinct aspect of their society, including fishing, trade, warfare, agriculture, mining, pilgrimage, sacred sites, slavery, and child-rearing. Despite theoretically holding absolute power, the inclination towards madness among noble elites necessitates alliances to mitigate internal conflicts. Below the priest dukes are the Blibdoolpoolp, or priest princes, who may govern smaller cities. Supporting the Kuo-Toa nobility are the Blibdoolpoolp and the Blibdoolpoolp, inquisitor rogues and regular priests known respectively as the Eyes of the Priest King and the Pincers of the Priest King. Sacrificial duties fall to a lower caste of priests called Lashes, specializing in lightning abilities. Enforcing the Sunken Council's authority are the Scour, or Whips, zealous fanatics who inspire fervent militia support for the archpriests and their deities. Their power originates from archpriests rather than their own belief energy. Typically offspring of archpriests, Whips vie fiercely for succession upon their predecessor's demise, although those who displease may lose their divine status or even face death. Blibdoolpoolp, known as Monitors, constitute a celibate elite order of warrior monks serving as the clandestine police force of Kuo-Toan society. Their responsibilities include culling the weak and apprehending criminals and the insane. Employing a unique Kuo-Toan martial art, Monitors exert mental control and channel their inner madness into combat. Techniques involve applying adhesive substances to strikes and executing rapid lunges uncommon for Kuo-Toa. Both Whips and Monitors undergo rigorous mental training to mitigate their susceptibility to their species' madness. Assisting Whips and Monitors are elite warriors known as Harpooners, tasked with aiding in the capture and confinement of deranged citizens using their harpoons, though they are equally adept at using them in combat against invaders. Other combatants include Cutters and Drowners, Kuo-Toa rogues specializing in subterfuge and secrecy, primarily serving offensive roles within the hierarchy. Those who succumb to madness are captured, with violent individuals either exiled to regions beyond settlements to serve as a first line of defense, or confined within holding cells integrated into defensive structures to act as disposable shock troops. Additionally, Kuo-Toa marauders, individuals with minor signs of madness, roam the Underdark, hunting creatures for enslavement and sacrifice. Commoners engage in menial tasks such as fishing, farming, or guard duty, though they typically flee dangerous combat situations without the supervision of a whip or monitor. Skilled fishermen, Kuo-Toa excel at diving deep to gather mollusks, crustaceans, and fish from their aquatic habitats. While they prefer a diet of flesh, they can subsist on plant matter and cultivate fields of mushrooms and kelp illuminated by phosphorescent fungi tended by slaves. Due to their limited mining abilities, they rely on slave labor for mining operations. Although they have a mild preference for gemstones, they highly value sacred relics, shells, or pearls, often trading gems to acquire these items. In the rigid caste system of Kuo-Toa society, individuals of higher status receive fanatical adulation, while those of lower rank are treated as slaves. Even juveniles experience the strictures of the caste system, with only noble offspring typically ascending to positions of priesthood or monitorship, while young individuals are sorted into the pens based on gender, fitness, and nobility. Despite its strict hierarchy, Kuo-Toa society is highly meritocratic, with skill playing a significant role in determining an individual's status. While mobility within the hierarchy exists, superiority grants individuals the authority to dominate others, fostering a culture of intrigue and plotting against superiors, albeit monitored by the Monitors to prevent outright rebellion. A significant flaw in their system arises from their susceptibility to insanity and flaws in their justice system. The system's failure to remove unfit individuals from positions of power results in noble elites afflicted with madness retaining their positions, leading monitors to interpret their teachings with discretion, and sometimes leading to their own inefficiency due to mental disorders. Kuo-Toa's settlements revolve around central pools utilized for a myriad of activities, including recreation, transportation, religious ceremonies, exercise, communal dining, spawning, and caring for offspring. These pools are considered deeply traditional spaces, reminiscent of the Kuo-Toa's ancestral presence in above-ground tidal pools, and are occasionally enclosed by glass domes. Privileged Kuo-Toa nobles often maintain private royal spawning pits, accessible only to themselves, their concubines, and higher-ranking Kuo-Toa. Noble pools cater to the needs of pampered juveniles, providing them with sustenance. Kuo-Toan architecture, relatively free from strict oversight by the ruling clergy, retains marine motifs, with blue and green gems and shells prominently embedded in their structures. Artisans tirelessly infuse alien thought patterns into their shell-like designs. Legend has it that prolonged and intense exposure to Kuo-Toan architecture may induce madness. Interior decorations include beds of seaweed and silken fabrics. Freestanding buildings are rare, as central caverns double as markets, communal spaces, and places of worship, with individual dwellings carved into existing walls. Apartment systems accommodate pilgrims seeking respite after long journeys. All communities dedicated to the worship of Blibdoolpoolp feature shrines, with larger settlements boasting major temples that serve as central hubs for smaller satellite settlements. Most Kuo-Toa reside in scattered tribes far from their ancestral origins, embarking on arduous pilgrimages to reach these temples. Situated in damp caverns surrounded by vast bodies of water, these shrines welcome Kuo-Toa and other races alike, serving as venues for intergroup trade, council gatherings, neutral meeting grounds, and Sea Mother worship. While typically independent, communities unite to defend these sacred sites from destruction. Within the Underdark lies the revered Holy Mother's Cauldron, a sacred shrine every Kuo-Toa aspires to visit at least once in their lifetime. Other grand ziggurats are constructed within shallow pools, featuring stones arranged as both staircases and amphitheaters where adults oversee and conduct unholy rituals. Blibdoolpoolp, the patron deity of the Kuo-Toa, is a paranoid, reality-denying goddess of the sea whose sanity is highly questionable. Revered as the supposedly ancient Sea Mother, she regards the Kuo-Toa as her children, although some speculate that she may be nothing more than the nonsensical creation of her followers' madness-fueled imaginations. Blibdoolpoolp typically manifests as a large nude human female adorned with a lobster's head and claws, although alternate representations depict her with a crayfish's features and an articulated shell encasing her shoulders. Those who gaze deeply into her eyes from close proximity risk succumbing to madness. A bloodthirsty deity, she harbors intense animosity towards the suffering endured by her Kuo-Toa followers at the hands of the various races. Surface dwellers, Illithids, and Drow are particularly despised, with humans and elves singled out for their role in driving her children into the Underdark. Mind Flayers and Drow are viewed as rivals for the limited territory remaining to her followers. Conversely, her disdain for sea dwellers, except for sea elves, is comparatively minor. The Sea Mother exhibits irrational behavior, characterized by unpredictable mood swings and capricious changes in demeanor. She maintains her secretive nature, avoiding interaction with most other deities. Believing herself to possess a profound magical secret pertaining to the nature of the universe, she hoards these secrets, rendering them inaccessible for verification. Pearls hold significant value to the Sea Mother, surpassing normal gems and precious metals in terms of earning her favor. The Drowning Goddess primarily manifests as a spellcaster, wielding a wide array of spells, specializing in summoning magic and elemental manipulation of water, although she lacks control over fire. Similar to her Kuo-Toa devotees, she possesses resilience against poisons and paralysis and is immune to all forms of water magic. Her eyes possess formidable power, capable of piercing through most illusions. She can ensnare opponents with her claws, compelling them to gaze into her eyes, potentially driving them to madness. Additionally, she could create a symbol of insanity each day, inducing madness in her adversaries. She also commands the ability to summon waves of giant crustaceans that serve her briefly, as well as massive water elementals bound to her service for up to 4 hours daily. Blibdoolpoolp's influence extends to empowering favored Kuo-Toa individuals. The Whip of Whips can designate a single Kuo-Toa egg in a settlement as exalted, imbuing it with exceptional physical and divine abilities destined for greatness. Additionally, she can enhance existing whips or monitors she favors, granting them immense power and causing them to grow to titanic proportions, becoming Kuo-Toa Leviathans. She can grant her faithful the unique spell Touch of Blibdoolpoolp, enabling the caster to transform their hand into a large lobster-like claw. Those in her service receive the ability to speak a priestly language distinct from the Kuo-Toa language and derived from Aquan. Blibdoolpoolp's domain is known as the Murky Depths, situated within the elemental plane of water. The waters of this realm churn and swirl in accordance with her emotional fluctuations. Surrounding the realm are massive primitive crustaceans, serving as a manifestation of the Sea Mother's attempt to reassure herself of her undiminished power. Visitors to this realm, who cannot naturally breathe underwater, are granted this ability by the deity herself, placing them immediately in her debt. Within the Murky Depths resides an immense spherical temple resembling a moon, drifting through its fiendish waters. It serves as the abode for fiendish crustaceans, as well as her Kuo-Toa followers and servants. The Sea Mother dedicates much of her time to brooding over her favored race, while harboring plans for revenge against those who banish them from the surface. She is renowned for dispatching avatars to preside over large-scale sacrificial rituals conducted by her priests, often resulting in the drowning of numerous humanoids. Additionally, she occasionally holds court for visitors who offer tributes in exchange for minor favors from the goddess. Merely visiting her domain requires a substantial offering of gold and gems, typically totaling tens of thousands of gold pieces, although payment in pearls reduces the cost. Visitors failing to bring offerings are subjected to a Geas spell, compelling them to return later with the requisite offering or a number of drow sacrifices. Those affected by the spell are also forbidden from harming the Kuo-Toa, either directly or indirectly, until fulfilling the Sea Mother's demands. She does not provide omens to the Kuo-Toa for guidance or assistance. Instead, her communications reflect her fluctuating moods, which can be unpredictable due to her unstable state of mind. Blibdoolpoolp actively avoids contact with most other deities, though she maintains a relatively amicable relationship with the Ixan deity Ilzendron. While she harbors an intense hatred for the drow, she refrains from direct confrontation with them, instead compelling individuals of other races to deliver drow as sacrifices whenever an opportunity arises. The only worshippers of the god are Kuo-Toa, whose priests oversee much of their civilization. These priests maintain large black pearls and giant crustaceans in their temples, interpreting changes in the pearl's coloration or the animal's behavior as favorable omens. Priests from different settlements collaborate to ensure mutual defense and are tasked with driving away any Illithid settlers found in proximity to their homes. Lobsters are among the goddess's favored offerings and are regularly sacrificed to her. As a deity associated with scavenging, she also appreciates offerings of discarded personal items that are later retrieved. A sincere display of faith involves regurgitating offerings at her feet, a practice observed regularly by her devout followers. Following their expulsion from the surface, the Kuo-Toa fell into the clutches of the Mind Flayers and were subjected to enslavement. Unable to withstand the psionic domination of the Illithids, the formerly peaceful Kuo-Toa descended into madness and fervent religious fanaticism, fabricating deities to shield themselves from their adversaries. Certain scholars posit that Blibdoolpoolp is merely one of the many deities invented by the Kuo-Toa, likely originating from the modification of a human statue by Kuo-Toa, which was then worshipped as a deity after being adorned with crustacean features. The intense fanaticism of the Kuo-Toa priests was such that they managed to tap into clerical powers. Notably, the ancient Kuo-Toa tribes of the open seas are unaware of the god's existence. The ruling archpriests within Kuo-Toa communities dictate which gods the lower-ranking Kuo-Toa must exclusively worship, some of which are fabricated by the priests themselves. In their madness, Kuo-Toa may also venerate Krakens, Aboleths, Morkoths, and other eldritch horrors, unaware of being manipulated by these entities. Certain tribes adhere to more conventional divine entities, including the slimy and eldritch Gaunadur, the tyrannical Bane, the water deity Ixitxachitl, and the mistress of darkness Shar. Some Kuo-Toa factions also practice demon worship, revering entities such as the savage Demogorgon. Followers of Demogorgon among the Kuo-Toa revel in mindless acts of violence, seeking his aid in their quest to restore their empire. The nearly extinct Kuo-Toa of the open seas, decimated by the Sahuagin who perceive them as a threat, are fervent adherents of Dagon. Believing themselves to be the primordial race, they anticipate Dagon's return to submerge the surface world in a flood. They propagate his faith among humanoids, infiltrating coastal towns and rewarding allegiance with wealth and bountiful fishing, while punishing resistance with genocidal raids. Dagon exists as a primordial being, an Oberith, and holds the title of Demon Lord. He currently resides in the Shadow Sea, which is the 89th layer of the Abyss. Dagon possesses a body that combines features of an octopus and a fish. He has numerous tentacles and a covering of black rubbery skin adorned with numerous red, unblinking eyes. His flesh is protected by fish scales, and he boasts long rows of fangs protruding from his mouth. Dagon also appears to have had heroic good descendants in Faerun, with one confirmed individual being Captain Thoster. Thoster was among the heroes striving to prevent the Eladrin Maliana from unlocking the Far Manifold with the Key of Stars in the Year of the Secret, 1396. Throughout his journey, Thoster's lineage gradually revealed itself. Initially, he believed himself to be a descendant of Kuo-Toa, but through a painful transformation, he discovered that he was in fact a demon scion, directly descended from Dagon. It's important not to mistake the demon lord Dagon with the exiled devil who shares the same name and resides on Avernus, the first layer of the 9 hells. Originally named Jagon, Asmodeus forcefully changed his name to Dagon to prevent summoning attempts for the outcast devil. In ancient lore, upon the arrival of the first primordials in the Abyss, Dagon already resided there, lurking in its depths. When Demogorgon sought to claim the Shard of Evil, Dagon emerged from the Blood Sea to challenge his control. Despite their monumental battle, the shard was ultimately seized by Obak-Sob instead. Dagon's history on Toril remains concealed beneath the surface of the Sea of Fallen Stars and the western waters of Maztica. He and his minions linger in the trench of Lopak, known only as those who sleep below. They plague the dreams of swimmers in the Sea of Fallen Stars with nightmarish visions. Among the demons, Prince Dagon harbored the most ambitious plans, aiming to surpass a pantheon of sea creatures and claim their divine powers. To achieve this, he subjected the depths of the Sea of Fallen Stars to the control of his servants and their armies. Employing ancient eldritch magic, he curtailed the influence of the Shalaran deities in the Sea of Koalinths in western Maztica. The subsequent move involved the creation of the 5 wild tides intended to sweep numerous Shalaran into the Sea of Fallen Stars, where Dagon's minions could slaughter them. Dagon employs this strategy every 720 years, with the most recent wild tide occurring in the Year of the Unstrung Harp, 1371. This time, the portal remained open and eventually became permanent. The Shalaran of Faerun kept the existence of the portal concealed, fearing its potential exploitation by others. However, another troubling development emerged. Between the 4th and the 5th tides, the Shalaran residing near Maztica largely abandoned their traditional gods due to their perceived silence. Instead, they began venerating the demon Dagon, whose cult gradually supplanted the former religion, becoming dominant in the Sea of Koalinths. The Shalaran of the Sea of Fallen Stars severed travel connections between their communities, but by then, the cult of Dagon had already infiltrated their ranks and was growing clandestinely. Kuo-Toa, appointed as ambassadors to surface towns, held the title Voices of Dagon. Unlike the revered yet feared clerics of Dagon, these individuals were trusted not only with spreading the word of Dagon, but also with safeguarding the interests of the Kuo-Toa race. They are often equipped with gold statuettes and jewelry to sway and bribe those who are susceptible to manipulation and greed. Only the most skilled Kuo-Toa bards, typically chosen from the pool of charismatic children trained as bards, were granted this prestigious role. At times, Kuo-Toa worshipped existing deities under altered names. For example, they might refer to Demogorgon as Limagugun or Baal as Bubal. Kuo-Toa harbor antagonism toward nearly all other subterranean races and surface dwellers. They do not hesitate to abduct individuals for sacrifice to their gods or for use as slave labor, with slaves constituting around 1/4 of their population. They hold a particular enmity toward the Drow, who had once exterminated them on sight. Despite this animosity, Kuo-Toa engage most frequently in trade with the Drow. They even cooperate with them on occasion during raids on deep-nosed settlements to capture the inhabitants for sacrifice. However, their alliance is purely transactional, and minor conflicts still occur between them. While Kuo-Toa recognize the importance of trade and engage in it with nearly any race, they make exceptions for mind flayers and their allies, who they attack without provocation. This hostility likely stems from the mental oppression inflicted upon the Kuo-Toa by the mind flayers, which has weakened their once powerful empire. Among the few races freely associated with by the Kuo-Toa are the Ixan, whose deities have amicable relations. In Kuo-Toan cities, Ixans live separately from the Kuo-Toa populace. Centuries ago, prior to the shift away from wizardly pursuits towards religious dominance, their clerics and arcane masters collaborated to engineer colossal siege crabs for devastating their adversaries. Other mounts utilized by Kuo-Toa include rare species of giant sea slug known as Cerulin and occasionally willing Morkoth. Similar to typical fish spawning, female Kuo-Toa deposit eggs in communal pools, which are later fertilized by males. The offspring, known as fingerlings, bear a resemblance to a hybrid of tadpoles and fish, standing at about 1 foot tall and residing entirely underwater for a year. Upon reaching 3 feet in height, they become fully amphibious. These older fingerlings are segregated into separate pens based on various criteria until reaching 5 years of age, at which point they are matured into fully grown adults. During the transitional phase of semi-maturity, culling rituals occur to manage the large numbers of spawned fingerlings. One such ritual involves an underwater maze populated by Ixan, designed to eliminate the weak, sluggish, and docile fingerlings. Until they reach adulthood, they are generally not regarded as individuals. The typical lifespan of a Kuo-Toa is approximately 60 years. Kuo-Toa have the capacity to interbreed with humans, yielding offspring bearing physical traits similar enough to infiltrate human society. These offspring might initially appear normal at birth, but gradually adopt more Kuo-Toa-like characteristics as they mature. Compiling Kuo-Toan history proves challenging due to their existence predating human records. Some legends hint at their potential kinship with Locathahs and Morkoths. A widely embraced theory in Faerun posited a common ancestral race resulting from a magical merging of fish and human slaves for scavenging beneath the sea. Various entities including dragons, the Imiskar Empire, the Netherese Empire, and the God Kings of the Old Empires are suggested as possible creators. In these stories, the ancestors of the Kuo-Toa and these other races encountered dark gods in the depths of the Inner Sea, promising power and liberation in exchange for worship. Some tales place this event in the Trench of Lopak. These dark deities purportedly transformed the ancestral fishmen into the first Kuo-Toans and Morkoths, with variations suggesting the creation of Ixitxachitls and Selkies. Another theory proposed they were created by the Batrachi, an early progenitor race. Beyond their genesis, ancient Kuo-Toan legends recount the establishment of a surface empire, later repelled by the humans and demi-humans. Alternatively, land-dwelling but sea-modified races, like sea elves, purportedly drove them to near extinction, toppling their underwater dominion. Both scenarios likely occurred, with humanity's ascendancy and surface allies quelling the initial invasion, while those seeking refuge in the seas fell victim to the myriad sea monsters. In recorded history, by the end of the Second Seros War beneath the Inner Sea, in negative 8,282, the Kuo-Toan consortiums had been eradicated. On the plains of Duna, their cavern cities all collapsed, and all the Kuo-Toa there were massacred. This left them practically extinct in the Inner Sea until the 14th century. Some of the Kuo-Toa of the Inner Sea fled to the depths surrounding the Aglarondan Peninsula, while others escaped to the tunnels of Herodotus and eventually founded the city of Leshnimuel. Either way, the Kuo-Toa were compelled to dwell in the Underdark caverns and continue their empire from within its murky depths. According to Kuo-Toan lore, the Gogglers abandoned their ancestral domains during this migration, encountering something that drove most of their race mad. By some accounts, it was the mental domination of the Illithids, who enslaved and mentally fractured the minds of the Kuo-Toa. Rendered useless as servants due to their lack of sanity, the Illithids then deserted them, leading the Kuo-Toa to kill them on sight. Other factors contributing to the widespread madness of the Kuo-Toa include mental subjugation by other eldritch monsters, such as enslavement by Morkoths, genetic degradation from inbreeding, dark rituals to their mad gods, constant suspicion and brutality, and the spread of insanity within their communities like a contagion. Their empires experienced a decline, with only a few of their once great cities remaining, and other Kuo-Toa forced into hiding in small underground oases. Some of these settlements grew into cities, including Blibdoolpoolp, the city of pools, and Lublishar, the city of welcome darkness. Morkoths, also known as wraiths of the deep, are a merciless and malevolent species of aquatic hunters possessing mesmerizing abilities, dwelling within the inner and outer sea of Faerun. Each group of Morkoths inhabiting these seas exhibits distinct physiological, behavioral, and social characteristics. Within the aquatic community of Seros, the Morkoths are identified by various names. Universally, they are known as the Corrupted. Among Tritons, they are called the Krakens, translating to the kin of Kraken in their language, while the merfolk refer to them as the Deep Demons. Initial descriptions of Morkoths were obscure, hinting at a humanoid form. However, as their interactions with other races increased, a clearer depiction has emerged. They are often depicted as grotesque amalgamations of different species, incorporating features from elves, humans, Kuo-Toas, Locathahs, and squids. Morkoths possess a dark-hued skin ranging from deep purple to inky black. The skin on the undersides and tips of their limbs emit a faint silver glow in the depths. Their heads are equipped with gills and resemble those of Locathahs, featuring wide jaws filled with numerous sharp teeth even when closed. Some variations sport a beak akin to a squid, octopus, or kraken, particularly prevalent among those residing in the Inner Sea. Their fish-like eyes are wide-set, bulging, and capable of independent movement. Certain Morkoths, especially those outside the Inner Sea, are noted to have a dorsal fin running down their back. Their bodies are predominantly octopoidal, with 8 tentacle-like appendages constituting the lower half. They navigate underwater by flexing their lower halves and utilizing jet propulsion, achieved by swiftly drawing in water through their gills and other orifices. 4 front limbs extend from their midsections, often resembling lobster claws or pincers, though those from the Inner Sea may exhibit additional flexible tentacles or human-like arms with varying finger counts. On the outer seas, individuals with lobster-like limbs feature scales along their bodies, whereas Inner Sea dwellers possess chitinous plates. They typically regard most other races with disdain, suspicion, or complete indifference. Those dwelling in the outer sea tend to lead solitary and reclusive lives, seldom gathering together. They place little value on treasure or magic items, considering them primarily as tools for attracting prey or as bargaining assets. In contrast, Morkoths inhabiting the Inner Sea have evolved into more sociable beings over time, forming communities like the Arcanum of Oleth. They recognize the significance of magical artifacts and often target them during conflicts. These creatures are known to forge alliances with other malevolent races, offering assistance in exchange for slaves. Morkoths from the outer sea are inclined to consume their slaves quickly due to their insatiable hunger. They also indulge in deceit and are quick to betray allies if it benefits them. However, they occasionally maintain alliances with Krakens, providing aid in exchange for occasional sustenance in the form of food slaves. All Morkoths possess inherent hypnotic and charm abilities. These powers can influence creatures within a close range, with the potential to affect multiple targets simultaneously. The effectiveness of these abilities can be enhanced by constructing a specialized lair. Additionally, they possess a natural defense mechanism that can deflect spells, spell-like abilities, and magical effects back to their source. This defense can be temporarily nullified by dispelling it. Due to a protective membrane over their eyes, Morkoths can perceive the natural bioluminescence of objects and creatures in the lightless depths of the sea. This ability functions similarly to aquavision and dark vision spells, allowing them to see a great distance. However, this membrane retracts in well-lit areas, making them sensitive to bright sunlight and even uncomfortable under the light of a full moon. In rare cases where Morkoths possess human-like arms and hands, they can become wizards and cast spells. However, their underwater environment necessitates unique methods for storing spells. Instead of traditional spellbooks, Morkoth wizards inscribe their spells onto rock spindles, which they read through tactile sensation by wrapping their tentacles around them. As their wizardry grows, Morkoths often enlist retainers to carry their increasingly large spindles. The primary offensive capabilities of a Morkoth consist of its biting attack, whether it possesses a mouth filled with sharp teeth or a formidable beak, along with any lobster-like claws it might have. The sociable Morkoths of the inner sea are often observed traveling in groups for purposes such as slaving or waging war. In contrast, those dwelling in the outer sea rely heavily on their ability to hypnotize prey, luring them into cave lairs where they can be dispatched and consumed without resistance. These lairs serve as strategic assets for outer sea Morkoths, featuring a central chamber surrounded by 6 spiraling tunnels that intersect in a confusing, labyrinthine layout. This maze functions similarly to a hypnotic pattern, allowing the Morkoth to extend the range of its hypnotic power significantly. Any creature passing near this tunnel opening is susceptible to a direct assault on their willpower. Those who fail to resist are guided through the labyrinth to the central chamber, where they face the prospect of being devoured alive. Some accounts suggest that the Morkoth may attempt to charm its captives into submission while they were under the influence of their hypnotic labyrinth. Due to their cunning and caution, Morkoths typically attempt to lure only one creature into their lair at a time. For instance, when encountering a group of potential prey, they target the individual in the rear, hoping to entice it away without alerting the others. Categorized primarily as an aberration, the true origins of the Morkoth remain shrouded in uncertainty. One prevailing theory, widely accepted among scholars in Faerun, but largely disregarded by those in Seros, proposes a common ancestry shared among Morkoths, Locathahs, and Kuo-Toas. Seros is the name of the undersea realms of the Sea of Fallen Stars, and once the name of the Sea Elf Empire. The Seros Wars are the names given to the series of conflicts between various denizens of these realms, with evil races like the Aboleths doing battle with merfolk and sea elves. In one such war, as the Deep Netherese enslaved the Serosians who wandered near, the High Mages of the Elven Empire of Ar-Sel-Malir destroyed Deep Netheril by transforming the crystal domes into a substance that burns in water. The subsequent explosion created the Serlun Bay and Selgaunt Bay. During the Third Seros War, the 4 Arcana of Humbar, a group of spellcasting Morkoths, found themselves under relentless assault by the merfolk forces led by Coronal Essil of the Ar-Sel-Malir Empire. In the subsequent Fifth Seros War, the Morkoths faced another crisis as 2 Krakens, allied with Vaikwis the Dark, launched devastating attacks, significantly reducing their population in -780. Centuries later, during the Sixth Seros War, the Morkoths sought retribution against the Sea Elves following the collapse of their empire in -255. Over the 40 years of the conflict, the Morkoths established the theocracy of the Deep Ones, emerging as a dominant power in the undersea realm. The Seventh Seros War erupted when the theocracy of the Deep Ones launched assaults on neighboring regions, Esrath and Murath, in -108. However, the conflict took an unexpected turn in -106 when unknown Triton forces struck the Morkoths from an unforeseen direction, resulting in their decisive defeat. In one of the war's final engagements, a select unit of Morkoth warriors managed to vanquish the storm giant Lorthar of the Waves, wielding Kaias' Kraken Scourge, a renowned double-ended sword briefly held by the Morkoths before being reclaimed by the Tritons in their remarkable triumph. A millennium later, in 911, the Morkoth Arcanum of Oleth, led by first Archane Xinacht, imposed a tyrannical rule over their subjects and embarked on the construction of the 9 towers of Seros. The great arcane Aduk of the Morkoth Arcanum orchestrated the abduction of Eadral's Queen Willa and 2 of her daughters in 1329. The captives were cruelly transformed into mindless creatures and dispatched to assail their own capital, Voalidru. In retaliation, the Eadrani merfolk launched a counterattack on Oleth later that year, resulting in the demise of their Archmage and his cohort of Archcounts. The typical lifespan of a male Morkoth ranges from 80 to 100 years. However, among Outer Sea Morkoths, females have a significantly shorter lifespan of around 10 to 20 years due to their unique reproductive methods. They are carnivorous creatures that prey on a variety of marine life forms. Their primary diet includes Kuo-Toans, octopuses, Sahuagin, and sharks. In the Inner Sea, they primarily reside in a vast oligarchic magocracy located in the Lesser Hmer Plateau, known as the Arcanum of Oleth. Beyond this nation, Morkoths can be found in cities like Mithnantar and Katoris, with the latter being the clandestine rogue city and a relic of the Arcana of Humbar, situated on the western cliffs above the Bimal Trench. There are rumors of an abandoned Morkoth city deep within Mount Tiekal, an undersea mountain, and occasional sightings in and around the Trench of Lopak. Outside the confines of the Inner Sea, Morkoths lurk in the Shining Sea amidst the sunken ruins of Untisser. While the Outer Sea Morkoths are not known to venerate any deities, those of the Inner Sea believe that the dark gods responsible for their creation reside within the depths of the Trench of Lopak. Referred to as those who sleep below by some, early Morkoth theocracies in the Inner Sea held the belief that fervent prayers could potentially awaken these slumbering dark deities. Outer Sea Morkoths occasionally serve Krakens in exchange for rewards of food and intervene in conflicts only when directly impacted. Within the Arcanum of Oleth, Morkoths commonly subjugate Locathahs and Meros. This history of enslavement contributes to the hostile relations between Morkoths and Locathahs in the Inner Sea, often resulting in skirmishes upon encountering one another. The reproductive methods of Morkoths vary between those of the Inner and Outer Seas. In the Outer Sea, isolationist Morkoths follow a mating ritual where a male ventures out of its lair once every decade to seek a mate, leaving behind a pheromone trail. After mating, the male returns to its cave lair, while the female lays a clutch of approximately 25 eggs and dies shortly afterward. The hatchlings, upon emerging, embark on a search for tunnels to inhabit, with only a few surviving maturity in about 5 years. In the Inner Sea, females produce 3 to 24 eggs, but do not lay them directly. Instead, they seek out magical beings to implant the eggs within their internal organs. After approximately 2 months of incubation, the eggs hatch, and the hatchlings attempt to consume their way out of the host. A casting of Cure Disease can destroy the incubating eggs, though only a limited number are affected with each casting. During the Age of Humanity, the Arcanum of Oleth stood as the primary Morkoth nation in Seros. However, in the early era of upheaval and following the Spell Plague, Oleth came under the rule of the Kuo-Toa. Morkoths ambushed a Kuo-Toa delegation under a truce brokered by their god. Half of the Kuo-Toa were consumed, while the remainder were enslaved. Despite this, certain survivors, serving as Blibdoolpoolp's whips, initiated a relentless campaign of revolts and calamities against the Morkoth. In 1385, the Spell Plague ravaged Oleth, resulting in the dissolution of a third of the Morkoth mages in blue flashes. With the remaining Morkoths losing their grasp on their enslavement spells, the Kuo-Toa swiftly seized control of the city. Many Morkoths perished, while some managed to escape, and the Kuo-Toa retained control over most of the slaves. Subsequently, the Kuo-Toa began migrating into Seros for the first time. In 1393, several Kuo-Toa departed Oleth and established the colony of Tonasik. By 1479, the city of Oleth had fallen completely under the dominion of the Abolethic Sovreignty. As of the year 1370, Arhad served as the Morkoth ambassador from the Arcanum of Oleth. Arhad's unique ability to survive on land was facilitated by a golem-like construct resembling a massive water elemental within which he resided. Additionally, he was accompanied by a slithering tracker familiar, which he occasionally employed as a covert assassin. In the 15th century, the Abolethic Sovreignty created an offshoot race by subjugating and modifying the bodies of inner sea Morkoths. What distinguishes these creatures from the typical members of their species is their ability to fly and their readiness to serve as mounts for specially trained Kuo-Toans of the Abolethic Sovreignty. They fulfill various roles, including serving as couriers, messengers, honor guards, and skirmishing units. The Locathah, also referred to as fishmen, gillmen, or caparl, meaning slave in Kuo-Toan, are a humanoid race with fish-like features dwelling in both the inner sea of Faerun and the broader outer sea. These beings possess heads resembling those of fish, with toothless mouths, small fins in place of ears, and large eyes that are either completely black or white, the latter considered a favorable sign. Instead of hair, they sport a dorsal fin and flukes. They are comparable in size to humans. Their bodies are covered in fine scales ranging from olive green to ochre, while their stomach scales vary from sea green to pale yellow. Notably, Locathah have a stripe near their egg sacs with its color indicating their gender. For females, the stripe matches the coloration of their stomach scales. In the perception of the Locathah, their enslavement stemmed from the opportunistic actions by adversaries during periods of internal strife, causing fragmentation among the Locathah. Subsequently, they now reside in close-knit communities, steadfastly loyal to allies and committed to preserving such alliances. Despite enduring enslavement in the past, even under severe mistreatment, they harbor no bitterness or desire for revenge against former captors. However, if faced with enslavement again, they will employ all means, short of endangering their kin, to secure their freedom. They do not view enslavement as inherently shameful, but rather deem it unacceptable to remain passive in such circumstances. Interacting with Locathah can inadvertently lead to offense, given their adherence to numerous unspoken etiquette norms. When confronted by an armed individual, Locathah instinctively choose to either retreat or engage in combat. They prefer not to be touched by members of other species and maintain a cautious distance during interactions. Often, they guide unfamiliar creatures through their territory using their wake currents. The true beginnings of the Locathah, like those of many undersea civilizations, remain veiled in mystery. The Locathah priesthood of Iedro proposes a different narrative, teaching that their kind were once merfolk, cursed by their creator god into their present form as punishment for allowing corruption to taint their faith. According to this belief, devout worship and prayer offer a path to redemption, potentially transforming the Locathah back into merfolk. Conversely, some assert that Iedro fashioned the Locathah as they are, with sturdy bodies engineered for endurance and resilience, alongside the merfolk, to counter the Sahuagin threat. In contrast, Sahuagin mythology contends that Iedro's initial creation was a sort of fish, bitten in half by their own creator god Sakola, resulting in Iedro affixing legs to the fish portion and a humanoid torso to the tail. The oldest physical evidence of Locathah presence in the inner sea comprises carvings within undersea caves depicting them alongside merfolk and Sahuagin, dating back approximately -20,000 DR. Over the centuries, Locathah in the inner sea have endured enslavement by various sentient races of Seros, including the Shalarans. They also suffered under the yoke of slavery during the reign of the Netherese Empire, particularly within the subsea colonies of Deep Netheril. By nature, Locathah are hunter-gatherers, a characteristic that often leads other races to perceive them as mere barbarians. However, the Locathah themselves do not take offense to this perception, simply disregarding it and moving forward. The majority of them reside in communal tribes. Smaller groups, typically consisting of fewer than 100 members, function as simple hunting parties, typically led by males. In larger tribes, a preference for matriarchal leadership emerges, with the chieftain laying numerous eggs tended to by the tribe. They fiercely protect their hunting grounds and kelp farms, but generally maintain an open attitude toward strangers. By the 14th century, some Locathah had adopted the time song calendar, widely used by other races in Seros. Their territories typically encompass warm coastal waters. While they are content dwelling in deeper waters, the presence of their former captors in such areas have led these tribes to adapt to living in shallower regions instead. In the inner sea, their nomads inhabit the area south of Impiltur and west of Thesk, known as the Bimilin Hills. By the end of the 14th century, some of them had transitioned to permanent settlements on the slopes of the Hmer Plateau, utilizing it as a natural defense against their ancient adversaries, the Kuo-Toa and the Morkoths. Historically, they also resided within the Alember Deeps, but they were hunted to extinction by the Sahuagin, sparking a lasting enmity between them. A notably large and advanced civilization of Locathah thrives beneath the waves of the crowded sea spanning between Rogue Osto and the island of Afyal. Additionally, small communities can be found in certain port cities of Zahara. The Locathah possess their own unique racial language, but they are also proficient in Aquan, a common underwater tongue. Furthermore, the Locathah dwelling in the inner sea are known to speak Sarusan, a pidgin trade language that incorporates elements of their native tongue. The primary deity revered by the Locathah is Iedro, their creator god. However, their religious practices are more rigid and secretive compared to those of the merfolk. They guard their rituals closely, allowing outsiders to witness them only during spellcasting occasions. The clergy of Iedro are exclusively male. The Locathah's worship of Iedro revolves around the belief that their physical forms and the centuries of enslavement endured at the hands of various Seros races are both punishments for allowing corruption to infiltrate their faith. Redemption is seen as achievable only through unwavering devotion, prayer, and exclusive allegiance to Iedro. By the late 14th century, some Locathah clerics began to reject the rigid doctrines of the Iedro faith, embracing other more liberal religious practices in Mithnatar. Some Locathah even worship Ixitxachitl, adopting the practices of the Water Walkers. Regardless of their chosen deity, the clerics advocate for the acceptance of the bodies and abilities bestowed upon them by Iedro. An Ixitxachitl, also known as a chittle, deep zealot, or demon ray, is an intelligent aquatic species resembling a manta ray that lives in the oceans of Toril. They are highly intelligent, but tend to focus intensely on single objectives and lean towards evil actions. They typically ambush their prey in groups by hiding beneath the seabed. Their complex dens are usually carved out from coral reefs using slave labor, often leaving their surrounding environment barren of plant life and animals. The strongest of their kind, often clerics or vampiric types, lead groups through intimidation. In terms of spirituality, they all worship some form of dark power, while some are devoted to the demon lord Demogorgon, seeing themselves as his servants. Others in the Sea of Fallen Stars follow Ilxendrin, their racial patron god. The Ixitxachitls are generally despised by other marine creatures for their greedy nature and use of slavery. They frequently engage in conflicts over territory and resources with Sahuagins and Locathahs, merfolk, and the coastal human communities. They maintain a fierce rivalry with Mero regarding who better serves Demogorgon. The Ixan, a semi-amphibious species closely linked to the Ixitxachitl, bear resemblance to manta rays. However, unlike their relatives, they exclusively inhabit the Underdark. It's noteworthy that despite the presence of both saltwater and freshwater lakes in both places, Ixitxachitl are never found below the ground, while Ixan never venture to the surface. The true origins of the Ixan remain shrouded in mystery. Three primary theories exist regarding their ancestry. The prevailing belief suggests that they are a subterranean branch of the Ixitxachitl, akin to the relationship between Drow and Duergar to elves and dwarves. Alternatively, some posit the existence of an ancient subterranean progenitor race from which the surface manta rays emerged. The third hypothesis, supported by a minority, proposes that the Ixan originated from the surface seas and migrated downwards into the Underdark, where they were transformed by the environment's unique properties or through magical means. The historical narrative of the Ixan remains elusive, largely due to the oral tradition of their history and the influence of the Ilxendrin clergy. However, two events are widely regarded as semi-historical: the Great Flood and the revelation of the Demon Ray. The former suggests that the dispersion of the Ixan resulted from a catastrophic flood, with scholars attributing it to various causes such as glacier melt, interplanar disturbances, or sudden lake drainage. The latter recounts the appearance of the deity Ilxendrin, who unified the Ixan under his worship, supplanting their previous reverence for other dark powers like Dagon and Demogorgon. This event also marked the emergence of the first vampiric Ixan. Within the Ixan populace, two distinct variations exist: mutants and vampires. Mutants comprise around 2% of their population, and vampires make up roughly 3%. They are not inherently malevolent beings, but are systematically driven towards chaotic evil through rigorous indoctrination. For instance, the young of their kind can be confined into a chamber with no means of escape and left to starve until only the strongest, those who consumed their weaker counterparts, survived and were permitted membership in their society. Without such conditioning, they would lean towards neither evil nor chaos, nor towards good or law. Ixan communities typically adhere to case divisions. Typically, youths receive specialized instruction, either in clerical or wizardly disciplines. Ixan wizards possess an innate ability to discern individuals with magical potential and safeguard them. Vampiric Ixan consistently ascend to prominent positions within their societies. Governance within their communities rests in the hands of an oligarchy composed of both the priests and the wizards. As they have few natural adversaries thanks to their inclination towards isolation, it often allows them to evade conflicts with humanoid races. They maintain amicable relations solely with Aboleths and Kuo-Toa. When dealing with Aboleths, the Ixan find themselves subordinate, whereas with the Kuo-Toa they assume dominance. Many Ixan reside among the Kuo-Toa. Aboleths, particularly larger, more organized groups, are known to enthrall Krakens as some of their most powerful servants. Krakens are gargantuan creatures, often described as octopus-like, with numerous tentacles that can reach enormous lengths. A typical Kraken has a massive central body and eyes that burn with malevolent intelligence. Their skin is thick and rubbery, usually dark green or black, textured with barnacles and scars from battles fought over many centuries. Each of their tentacles is lined with powerful suckers that can be used with terrifying precision, whether to crush ships, drag prey into the depths, or battle formidable opponents like dragons or giant sea creatures. In addition to their physical might, they also possess magical abilities that allow them to control water currents, create whirlpools, and sometimes even cast spells related to the ocean or storms. Krakens make their homes in the darkest depths of the ocean, far from the reach of ordinary sea travelers, and often in places riddled with arcane energies or ancient ruins. These creatures prefer the solitude and vastness of the deep sea, which provides them with ample space to grow and roam without constraint. Their lairs are typically located in underwater caverns or wrecks of sunken cities, surrounded by a menagerie of lesser sea creatures that serve as both guards and food. The range of a Kraken's influence can extend across entire sea regions. They are known to stake claims on expansive territories that include crucial shipping lanes, island clusters, and even submerged ruins rich in magical artifacts. The presence of a Kraken in a region is enough to alter maritime maps and seafaring routes, as few captains are willing to risk the wrath of such a monster. Krakens are solitary creatures by nature, with each typically claiming its own domain and rarely tolerating intrusions by others of its kind. This isolation extends to their interactions with other sea creatures, which they dominate rather than cooperate with. Their behavior is not merely predatory, they are highly territorial and will actively patrol their domain. They use their intelligence to strategize the defense of their territory, employing both brute force and magic to deal with intruders. They exhibit complex behavior patterns, including the collection of treasures and relics. They are also attracted to magical objects and known to hoard such items within their lairs, using them to augment their own magical abilities and also simply as trophies. Krakens are not social creatures in the conventional sense, but their immense power and intelligence often force them into interactions with various races of the Forgotten Realms. These interactions are typically characterized by fear and reverence. Many coastal and island cultures worship Kraken as deities of the sea, offering sacrifices to appease them and avoid their wrath. Such worship can be out of genuine religious fervor or a pragmatic attempt to ensure safe passage through Kraken-controlled waters. On the other hand, underwater races like the Sahuagin or merfolk sometimes see Krakens as tyrants or apex predators to be avoided or outmaneuvered. Conflicts are rare, as Kraken's interests usually do not overlap significantly with these communities, but when they do, they can be catastrophic for less powerful races. Their ability to control key maritime routes and choke points make them strategic players in the economics of sea trade. Some Krakens have been known to establish themselves as de facto rulers of certain areas, demanding tribute from passing ships and even coastal settlements. Their influence extends to politics as well. Historical records recount instances where Krakens have indirectly or directly shifted the balance of power in coastal regions, either by allying with particular factions or by decimating fleets that threaten their domains. Surface dwellers are familiar with the Kraken Society, a clandestine group dealing in espionage, theft, blackmail, and intimidation to expand their influence. Their operatives, known as Krakenar, infiltrate various entities covertly, and then employ similar tactics, including strategic assassinations, to sow chaos and bring down establishments. Subsequently, they exploit the resulting power vacuum, portraying themselves as saviors by neutralizing the threats that they themselves created. The part that remains largely undisclosed is that the Kraken society is merely a single limb of a much broader and more ancient entity, often colloquially known among insiders as the tentacles of the deep. These extensions emanate from Slarkethril, the Kraken of the Purple Rocks, renowned as the king of the trackless depths and the master of the Veil. He headed other organizations, including the Heralds of the Deep, an ancient sect in the Purple Rocks that venerated him, the Forgotten Empire of Askarle, an expansive underwater domain which once surpassed the entire savage frontier in size, currently governed by the Kraken, and the Assassins of the Purple Veil, a highly skilled faction formerly under the Kraken Society's umbrella, but now operating independently, though potentially still accessible to select circles within their society. According to the lore upheld by the Heralds of the Deep, Slarkethril surpasses 40,000 years in age, predating Toril itself, or emerging at the moment of its creation. This would categorize Slarkethril among the ancient Kraken, beings of mythical stature who served the gods prior to the emergence of mortal civilizations and are rumored to have transcended to a higher realm of existence. The esoteric teachings of the Kraken Society narrate the existence of a grand Kraken empire that once reigned over the seas before facing betrayal and retreat into the depths of the abyssal chasm. Within these legends, the king of the trackless depths is prophesied to reclaim its lost dominion, promising the Society's members a future if embraced within its tentacles. However, none of these accounts align with reality. In truth, Slarkethril entered existence as per the Dale Reckoning during the 2nd century, specifically in the year of the Kraken, 151. Its early years were marked by exploration of the ocean's depths, gradually transitioning from wanderlust to an obsession with the remnants of shipwrecks and civilizations of the surface world. It thirsted for knowledge and the power that knowledge bestowed, so it unearthed the remnants. Slarkethril eventually came upon the submerged ruins of Askarle, an ancient elven city ravaged by the Dark Elves and submerged during a distant ice age. Delving into the vast repositories of knowledge within, the Kraken studied for many years, leveraging his newfound wisdom to assert dominance over neighboring underwater societies. Askarle evolved into the hub of a diverse empire, uniting Merrow, Nereids, mermen, noble weresharks, case-based whales, Kaposents, Koalinths, Malenti, Morkoths, water weirds, and others in a strange cosmopolitan setting. Having exhausted the resources of Askarle, Slarkethril recognized the necessity of expanding his influence to the surface world. Situated in the waters north of the Purple Rocks archipelago, Askarle served as the launch pad for his next endeavor. He infiltrated the sparse villages scattered across the desolate islands, establishing a cult that worshipped him as a malevolent sea deity. He initiated this by rescuing shipwreck survivors, indoctrinating them, and orchestrating their miraculous return to their communities. Over time, this cult grew to dominate the Purple Rocks entirely. Leveraging this stronghold of fervent devotion, Slarkethril employed similar tactics to establish the Kraken Society in small settlements along the northern Sword Coast. According to investigations by the Harpers, the earliest agents likely became active around the mid-12th century, potentially contributing to fostering rivalries that hindered the consolidation of the Sword Coast's isolated city-states into a unified northern empire, which aligns with Slarkethril's long-term objectives. However, the society experienced a rapid expansion in the early 14th century, extending its reach inland and establishing significant footholds in towns such as Yartar and Tribor, with the former becoming the society's headquarters. They have also significantly consolidated their presence in major coastal cities like Luskan, Neverwinter, Waterdeep, and Baldur's Gate. The Spell Plague inflicted widespread devastation upon Slarkethril's undersea realm. The precise nature of the catastrophe remains obscured to both the Harpers and other surface dwellers. However, it seems that the sunken city experienced a temporary loss or was somehow severed from the rest of the Askarlian Empire, thereby depriving the Kraken of his primary seat of power. This event may be linked to the enigmatic Kraken Gates, colossal teleportation portals once utilized by ancient Kraken. Slarkethril had reclaimed 4 of these gates in his empire. Consequently, in the aftermath of this event, numerous undersea clans and communities broke away from his empire, asserting their independence or becoming vassals to other dominant forces beneath the waves. Speculation has arisen regarding the possible demise of the king of the trackless depths, particularly in light of the perceived loss of his capital city. However, Slarkethral retains control over a small territory surrounding the Purple Rocks and has eventually re-established his authority over the city of Escarle. By the late 1470s, the dormant cells of the Kraken society have experienced a resurgence, indicating his renewed expansionist ambitions. Additionally, several minor conflicts have erupted beneath the waves as Escarlian forces have moved to resubjugate some of their former territories. Wastroliths, also known as Water Lords, inhabit aquatic environments across the lower plains. They taint nearby water sources with the abyss's dark power, bending it to their will. They resemble segmented eels with bulging, unblinking eyes and mouths filled with needle-like teeth. Their humanoid upper bodies sport a powerful tail and clawed arms, capable of growing to immense proportions. Characterized as arrogant bullies, Wastroliths assert dominance through intimidation and terror, wreaking havoc in their surroundings. Their influence poses a significant threat, particularly when they incite individuals of nefarious inclinations to engage in piracy and other criminal activities. While Wastroliths possess the capability to move on land, they excel as swimmers, displaying a superior agility and combat power in water. Armed with claws and fangs, they engage in combat with ease. They are immune to cold temperatures, but vulnerable to heat. Their mastery over water is unparalleled. Their mere presence corrupts it, enabling the manipulation of currents to hinder or redirect adversaries. They're impervious to water-related effects, including their own scalding attacks. Water tainted by a Wastrolith proves deadly and mentally destabilizing to those who consume it, though other demons might find it invigorating. Proficient in magic, they possess a wide array of abilities. In addition to standard demonic powers, they can cast spells such as Control Water, Deeper Darkness, Fear, Greater Dispelling, Read Magic, Suggestion, Telekinesis, Teleport Without Error, Tongues, and Wall of Ice at will. They can also utilize symbol spells and summon aquatic creatures up to 3 times daily. Wastroliths prefer to avoid unnecessary risks, relying on their minions to engage in battles on their behalf. As long as their subordinates remain undefeated, they observe conflicts without direct intervention. Their initial tactic in combat involves summoning additional minions before utilizing other magical abilities against their enemies. Those who acquire magical knowledge through wizardly study often specialize in elemental water magic. Despite lacking direct magical control over undersea creatures, Wastroliths command respect to the extent that even summoned water elementals and animals obey their commands. They exhibit strong territorial instincts, engaging in battles for dominance amongst themselves, yet primarily focusing on their own affairs. Seeking fealty from others, they construct elaborate underwater fortresses when present on the prime material plane. Commonly inhabiting the aquatic realms of the abyss and other lower planes, such as the fated depths of the river Styx, environments to which they are immune, Wastroliths often reside in the frigid, lightless expanse of Demogorgon's gaping maw, the 88th layer of the abyss. Favored minions of Dagon, they were once Oberiths before evolving into their distinct demon type. They have been granted autonomy in the Shadow Sea as long as their actions align with Dagon's enigmatic agenda. Though not reliant on sustenance, Wastroliths occasionally indulge in the flesh of intelligent marine beings like merfolk and aquatic elves. The remnants serve as deterrents to intruders, complemented by tactics such as sinking ships and driving away sea dragons and other formidable undersea denizens. Summoning a Wastrolith with a summon spell carries significant risks, as the demon may attempt to break free from its bonds and turn against the summoner, posing a lethal threat. Koalinths, also recognized as sea hobgoblins, exhibit a ferocious demeanor in their existence within the inner sea. Their physical appearance mirrors that of hobgoblins, but they have vibrant hues and possess gills. Typically, their color spectrum leans towards lighter shades with a greenish skin tone. Their adaptations to aquatic life include webbed extremities and a sleeker physique. In terms of temperament, Koalinths are infamous for their ferocity, akin to their land-dwelling counterparts. Their animosity towards elves runs deep, influencing their diplomatic inclinations. They are predatory by nature, displaying a general aversion to other beings. Unique among aquatic species, Koalinths demonstrate equal adeptness in both freshwater and saltwater environments. They are as dedicated to warfare as their counterparts on land. They share a similar martial skill and the ability to navigate in darkness. While they are amphibious, Typically, they move more slowly underwater compared to their movement on land. Like many seafaring creatures, they favor tridents for combat in aquatic environments. Koalinths sergeants prioritize dealing with significant threats on the battlefield. They exhibit swifter movement underwater than other Koalinths and employ hooked nets to capture important adversaries. They excel at subduing these captives once restrained. Additionally, their societies include shamans and witch doctors aided by small teams. Tribal standards, carried by chiefs or sub-chiefs, boost morale and ferocity among those who witness them. Similar to their terrestrial counterparts, Koalinth society is marked by a strong structure and militarism. They establish lairs in underwater sea caverns, grottos, and shallow freshwater caves. Chiefs and sub-chiefs oversee their societies, with shamans serving beneath them. Sergeants lead routine military operations alongside their regular soldiers. For their language, they communicate in their own distinct dialect of Hobgoblin. They utilize guard creatures such as giant crayfish in freshwater and sea lions in saltwater. While they prey upon various aquatic humanoid and demi-human groups, their animosity is particularly directed towards sea elves. Chuuls are large aberrations resembling a dreadful fusion of crustacean, insect, and serpent. They closely resemble a yellow-green lobster, larger than a human and much heavier, with 4 lengthy legs, 2 sizable claws, a robust protective exoskeleton, a fan-like tail, and a cluster of tentacles around their mouths capable of inducing paralysis with a touch. Chuuls have only 2 seemingly contradictory desires: solitude and the consumption of humanoid flesh. However, if one desire is thwarted, the Chuul typically fulfills the other. When undisturbed, it finds prey to consume, and when disturbed, it usually encounters potential victims to devour. Despite their monstrous appearance, Chuuls possess a surprising level of intelligence. They frequently employ traps and ambushes to capture prey, though they remain uncivilized, lacking cultural practices, tool-making abilities, or permanent settlements. Nevertheless, they share a racial memory ingrained since birth, allowing them to recollect events from previous generations of their kind. These memories, although they fade with time, consistently convey one message: hostility towards the hunting of humanoids. Chuuls, formidable in physical combat, engage by seizing and puncturing their prey with their massive claws. Once ensnared within the Chuul's powerful grip, victims face either immediate crushing or are drawn towards the creature's mouth tentacles, which emit a paralyzing secretion. Even if initially resistant, victims typically succumb to paralysis or the Chuul's mandibles over time. During combat, Chuuls typically keep one claw free to fend off additional adversaries. When confronted by numerous foes, they discard paralyzed or deceased victims before engaging the next assailant. Although amphibious, they are not proficient swimmers. Similar to other aberrant beings, Chuuls possess psychic abilities. However, it's uncommon for young Chuuls to wield such powers. Instead, they gradually develop these abilities to emit psychic static with age. Older and larger Chuuls can emit a psychic moan to weaken resistance against psychic assaults, and sometimes utilize a psychic lure to attract prey. They boast exceptional night vision and combat skill even when blinded, keen alertness, and a natural immunity to poison. They favor combat either on land, where they can thrive, or in very shallow water, typically positioned by a shoreline. They lurk submerged or partially submerged in murky water, awaiting the sound of potential prey, at which point they will launch a surprise attack. Chuuls can be found living solitarily, in pairs, or in small groups of 3 to 5 individuals, referred to as pods. Pods deliberately seek out large bodies of still water to inhabit. Some Chuuls, particularly older ones, establish layers by excavating lake bottoms and constructing basic structures from trees and stones. These layers typically consist of interconnected circular rooms, connected by tunnels large enough for the largest member of the pod to traverse. One room with a Chuul layer invariably serves as a trophy chamber, as they possess a tendency for hoarding. Following a humanoid kill, a Chuul preserves a memento from the victim, such as shiny armor, jewelry, or even a finely crafted saddle. If the victim lacks anything of interest, the Chuul settles for displaying the skull in the trophy room. Due to their preference for solitude, only a select few creatures can peacefully coexist with the Chuuls, as encroaching upon their territory poses a significant danger. They exhibit innate hostility towards surface-dwelling intelligent humanoids like dwarves, elves, humans, and halflings, and often attack them when encountered. However, they do not target other aberrant or subterranean creatures. In fact, they have been observed collaborating with Grimlocks, Trogdolites, and Mind Flayers to eliminate and consume surface-dwelling beings. They sometimes trade discarded brains of their victims with Mind Flayers. Chulz may also engage in bartering, offering items from their hoard in exchange for captive humanoids or other delicacies. Surface-dwelling Chulz are capable of speaking Common, while those dwelling underground typically communicate in Undercommon. They inhabit aquatic layers across various watery habitats, although they favor swamps, jungle lakes, temperate marshes, and subterranean bodies of water. Some individuals deliberately seek out sewer tunnels or shipwrecks along coastlines to access more readily available food sources. They also utilize rivers and even oceans to traverse to new locations. As oviparous creatures, adult Chulz produce clusters of slimy yellow-green eggs from which hatchlings emerge. Adult Chulz lay these egg sacs infrequently and fiercely guard them, along with other pod members. In food-scarce environments, Chulz with hatchlings seek humanoid prisoners to feed their young. Despite their protective instincts towards their offspring, they sometimes affix their egg sacs to the undersides of ships, boats, and rafts to facilitate their dispersal to new lands. They exhibit heightened susceptibility to mutations, particularly influenced by magical experimentation, planar disturbances, and contaminated water. These factors can lead to the emergence of unusually large or toxic individuals. However, it is primarily through the manipulation of aberrant magic users that Chulz undergo mutations of truly alarming proportions. These practitioners aim to fully unlock their psychic potential, creating formidable minions with both physical power and potent mental abilities. Elder specimens that achieve considerable size are referred to as juggernauts. Additionally, an Uchulon, also known as a slime chul, is one implanted with a Mind Flayer tadpole. The Sahuagin are fish-like monstrous humanoid creatures who inhabit oceans, seas, underground lakes, and underwater caves. While they are officially known as the Sahuagin, those who fear or dislike them often refer to them as sea devils, or more derogatorily, fish heads. Sahuagin typically have green skin, darker on their backs and lighter on their bellies, with many sporting dark stripes, bands, or spots that tend to fade with age. They are approximately the height and weight of a human, and possess fish-like features such as webbed feet, hands, and gills, and a fin tail. Additional webbing is present down their backs, at the elbows, and notably where human ears would be. Some grow to towering heights, often attaining higher status due to their formidable nature, which allows challenges to the death for elevated positions. Females of their species develop specks of yellow on their tails, gradually increasing until their entire tail turns a deep yellow, signaling they are no longer considered suitable for mating. Approximately 1 out of every 200 hatchlings is born with 4 functional arms, and they're known as barons, displaying a black hue that fades to gray with age. While defective hatchlings are typically disposed of, Sahuagin spare the lives of these particular mutations. In Sahuagin communities located near sea elf settlements or frequented by sea elves, a peculiar phenomenon occurs. Roughly 1 out of every 100 hatchlings adopts the appearance of a sea elf, sporting greenish-silver skin and green or blue hair. These anomalies, called Malenti, face ostracism from the clan but are protected by the ruler and raised by the most skilled warriors and priestesses to serve as spies. As fierce combatants, they neither seek nor grant mercy, even towards children or infants. Their formidable claws are armed with long, sharp fangs and are often employed in battle. While swimming, they use their feet or hands to propel themselves, attacking with talons or weapons. Spears and tridents are their preferred weapons, often coated with a prepared poison. Half of any Sahuagin group typically wield nets embedded with barbs. They utilize manta rays for transportation to assault ships and other vessels when in groups. Additionally, they employ sharks as allies in battle, although their control over them is somewhat limited. Despite their physical strength, they harbor a deep fear of magic and refrain from its study or development. Only priestesses of the shark god Sokola utilized clerical magic granted by the god, viewed with trepidation and considered a necessary evil. Sea elves and lizard folk are natural adversaries of them. Coexistence between elves and Sahuagin is impossible, leading to prolonged, bloody conflicts that occasionally disrupt shipping and maritime trade. While they have a higher tolerance for lizard folk, their animosity towards tritons is only marginally less intense. The exact reasons for the deep-seated hatred between these races is somewhat unknown. Their underwater settlements feature interconnected underground passages and tunnels, with a strictly patriarchal society. A king reigns supreme, overseeing princes, who in turn govern barons. Each baron presides over a village, while a prince commands 20 villages, and a king rules an entire coastline. Cities with several thousand inhabitants are administered by kings, whose palaces dwarf all other structures in the area. Though not in positions of rulership, females hold similar hierarchical roles among teachers, lore-keepers, and priestesses. They have a unique method of preserving knowledge, employing what they refer to as singing bundles, conches and shells reinforced with bone and sinew. When shaken, these bundles emit the clicking and hissing sounds characteristic of their language. Multiple births are common among them, and they deal severely with offspring deemed inefficiently robust or aggressive, subjecting them to compulsory fights to the death among the young. They display a fixation on consumption and are eager to eliminate anything perceived as weak or unworthy of competing for resources. In times of war, they adhere to a set of protocols known as the laws of battle. However, there are instances when groups of them have engaged in what is termed a wild hunt, launching a frenzied rampage discarding all rules. Their primary language is their own, although they are known to be proficient in Common, Abyssal, and Aquan. Additionally, they possess the ability to convey simple concepts to nearby sharks through telepathy. Malenti, also known as Tusarlos in the Shalaran language, are mutated offspring of Sahuagin who bear a striking resemblance to sea elves. They infiltrate sea elf communities, typically with sinister intentions. The term Malenti translates to changeling in Elvish, while in Sahuagin it means ugly one. Their resemblance to sea elves is so uncanny that even authentic sea elves struggle to discern the difference. Dolphins, however, sometimes possess the ability to distinguish between them, which often causes Malenti to harbor strong aversions towards dolphins. Shunned by their own clan at large, they find protection and guidance from their clan's leader, who assigns the most skilled warriors and priestesses to train them as spies. Some Malenti develop the remarkable ability to detect sea elves from long distances, enhancing their utility to the clan. The duration of their training varies widely, spanning from a few weeks to a rigorous 20 years, depending on the ruler's strategic objectives. This training also instills a sense of honor in Malenti, casting them as defenders of their clan. Given their tolerance for open air and fire, Malenti often serve as the clan's blacksmiths, adept at operating forges, where other Sahuagin would struggle. Ironically, Malenti cannot reproduce with sea elves, but can mate with Sahuagin or other Malenti, yielding offspring that always share their mutant heritage. However, those who mate with Malenti typically eliminate any mutant offspring. When they discover their true standing within society, some choose to depart from their clans. Additionally, as they near the end of their lifespans or lose their usefulness, they commonly flee their clans. This pattern sometimes results in the formation of entire communities of Malenti, which true Sahuagin often target and eradicate. Two rogue clans are known to have established new cultures and colonies far from their original societies. As outcasts, they prioritize discretion and reject the perceived savagery of their societal norms. Seeking a more harmonious coexistence with other races, they are open to forging alliances while remaining vigilant against potential aggression. Their skill in metalworking underwater gives them an advantage in their efforts to integrate with other races. One of the colonies, Kimal, lies above the Bimal Trench near the shores of Aglarond. Led by a leader elected through popular vote, the noble Malenti of this colony aspire to create a community where every Malenti is regarded as equal. The settlement is constructed from structures fashioned out of giant clamshells. The second settlement is situated in the Bay of Chisenta within the elven enclave of Velurar. The Malenti clan assisted the resident elves in repelling a Sahuagin onslaught, earning their acceptance in the fight against their common enemy. The noble Malenti, as they're called by the elves, have embraced new religious beliefs, transitioning from worshipping Sekola's church to venerating Deep Sashelas, Eldoth, or Mistra. The shift has received strong backing from Kimal's leader, aiming to distance themselves from their demonic origins and potentially gain access to wizardry. The origins of the Malenti trace back to ancient times, when a group of surface-dwelling mages attempted to create a hybrid between sea elves and Sahuagin. Some of the Sahuagin, subjected to their experiments, managed to escape and return to their communities, where they bred and gave rise to the Malenti lineage. Sekola is the shark deity worshipped by the Sahuagin. He manifests as a massive great white shark and displays little concern for his followers, urging them to be self-sufficient. His avatar exudes an aura of fear and possesses the ability to consume a human whole, being immune to fear and other forms of pacification. Sekolah resides in Stygia within the realm of Sherushk in Beator, and maintains a long-standing rivalry with Demogorgon, extending to Sahuagin's conflict with the Ixitxachitl. Despite his distance and indifferent relationships with his priests, he grants them spells and does not object to temporary pacts with other malevolent entities. One of Sekolah's prominent followers is Lakhovas, known as He Who Swims with Sekolah. Legend has it that Sekolah discovered the Sahuagin race after defeating a formidable foe in the sea. Delighted by his victory, he adopted them as his own and dispersed them throughout the seas to propagate independently. Lakhovas, an ancient megalodon, remains shrouded in mystery regarding his extensive past. However, historical records confirm his involvement in devastating assaults on coastal settlements and his role as the catalyst for the 12th Seros War. Numerous underwater societies' tales allude to Lakhovas, yet the Locathah possess the most elaborate accounts. According to their lore, during the Days of Thunder, Lakhovas materialized from the depths in human guise, seeking kinship akin to himself. He audaciously challenged the gods of Toril regarding their creation, eliciting their curiosity. However, failing to find another like him, he ultimately returned to the sea. It is said that he once journeyed alongside Sekolah until the deity liberated the first Sahuagin from their confinement within a colossal clamshell. Most accounts recall a period in Lakhovas' life when he yearned for love and acceptance to alleviate his profound sense of solitude. His quest captured the attention of Umberlee, intrigued by this mortal creature who, unlike her divine nature, possessed a fervent desire for adventure despite his mortality. At that time, Umberlee's demeanor softened and her fascination evolved into affection. Lakhovas reciprocated her love, finally discovering the fulfillment he sought. Umberlee showered him with lavish gifts, primarily consisting of precious metals and gemstones, along with bestowing upon him godlike abilities, endowing him with power and immortality. As life burgeoned on land, he desired the adoration of terrestrial creatures akin to that which Umberlee bestowed upon him. Venturing onto land once more in what would eventually be known as Cholt, Lakhovas utilized his newfound powers to conquer the land and construct a grand palace. During Umberlee's absences to other planes, Lakhovas would return to the palace, inciting conflict among neighboring kingdoms and pilfering their mages' magical artifacts. Succumbing to greed, he epitomized gluttony, earning the moniker Taker, as seizing what belonged to others became his sole pursuit. Despite amassing a harem numbering in the hundreds, Umberlee remained indifferent as long as he pledged his love solely to her. Unsatisfied and bored, Lakhovas feigned affection for one of his harem to stoke Umberlee's jealousy and garner more attention. In her youthful naivety, Umberlee believed his affections for the woman to be genuine, leading to her demise at Umberlee's hand. Lakhovas reveled in witnessing Umberlee's reaction, believing he now held sway over her. Unaware of the depth of Umberlee's anguish, he paid dearly for his mistake when Umberlee tore his left eye from its socket before departing. Unwilling to kill him, yet too wounded to remain, brooding for millennia, Lakhovas scoured the world for magic items to exact revenge upon the god. When the moment arrived to confront Umberlee, Lakhovas realized he had overestimated his own abilities and resources. Umberlee inflicted severe injuries upon him, breaking his bones and shedding his blood. Believing him to be dead, she scattered his enchanted artifacts across the seas of Faerun. However, Umberlee had not anticipated the aftermath of the War of Three Leaves, which led elven refugees to settle in the inner sea, where they stumbled upon some of Lakhovas' potent weapons. Although she nearly succeeded in driving the elves away from their newfound underwater refuge, she fell just short. As feared, the elves discovered a fragment of Lakhovas' most potent possession, an enchanted eye he used to replace his missing one. This fragment had been safeguarded in Myth-Nantar, shielded by the city's mythal, until it was lost during the 10th Seros War when Sahuagin assailants overwhelmed the city's defenders. According to Merman Naros, Lakhovas' resurgence from his dormant state has been prophesied as the arrival of a great malevolence. Once he had amassed enough power, it was rumored that he would target one of the greatest surface cities, which ultimately proved to be Waterdeep. His motives for assaulting Waterdeep were twofold: to retrieve an ancient magical artifact and rally the Sahuagin to his cause to assert his dominance over the sea. 650 years later, a Malenti priestess named Laquil, driven by ancient clues regarding the one who swims with Sekolah, stumbled upon a network of magma tunnels beneath the seabed northeast of Cholt. Within these tunnels, she encountered an emaciated, one-eyed, heavily tattooed human. Despite initially mistaking her for a thief, the man, confident in his own power, spared her life, envisioning her assistance and restoring him to his former glory. With her life hanging in the balance, he compelled her to spend 2 years imparting knowledge of Sahuagin politics and worldly affairs before transmuting himself into a Sahuagin hatchling, which Lakhovas then placed in her village's hatchery. As he matured into adulthood, he engaged in a fatal duel with the prince of another Sahuagin settlement, leading to his ascent as the Baron of Lakhovas' village. With Lakhovas' aid, Lakhovas' Baron, Huantun, orchestrated the demise of the king of the Claritros Sea, seizing the throne and appointing Lakhovas as prince in his stead. Over subsequent years, Lakhovas and Lakhovas, despite her elevated status as high priestess in Sahuagin society, collaborated to retrieve many of the scattered magical artifacts. As Lakhovas amassed wealth, he forged alliances, including securing the services of the pirate king of the Sea of Fallen Stars, Vergrom the Mighty, and the Morkoths, traditional enemies of the Sea Devils. His collection of magical items augmented his power, though he remained reticent about his ultimate designs even to his favorite servant. His meticulous assault of the city of Waterdeep began in 1369, utilizing a massed army of undersea monsters and pirates. At the climax of the conflict, he met his demise at the hands of Jarek Wolfsket, a young paladin of Lathander. By 1429, the Aboleth city from the far realm known as Xxiphu had returned from the citadel of the Outer Void to the skies above the Sea of Fallen Stars. Shortly thereafter, members of the Abolethic Sovreignty launched an assault on Akhanul, destroying the city of Bressune before the Genasi could retaliate. In the ensuing decades, a faction of Abolethic Sovreignty became intrigued by a pocket of spell plague in the Underdark beneath Neverwinter, utilizing it to advance experiments aimed at creating the Symphony of Madness. The initial trials of the symphony occurred a few years later when the Sovereignty corrupted the elder brain of a colony of mind flayers residing in Gauntlgrim, subsequently transforming them into plague-changed puppets for the Sovereignty. In 1451, the ruining of Neverwinter caused a massive chasm to cleave through the earth in the southeastern quadrant of the city, extending all the way down to the depths of the Underdark. This crevice revealed an underground lake where the Neverwinterian cell of the Abolethic Sovreignty conducted experiments on the plague land situated there. The emergence of the Shadowvar Thay War and the ensuing flurry of activity posed a threat to the Sovereignty's schemes. In response, they dispatched minions to engage other factions in the city, diverting attention from their own endeavors, with the succubus Arunica serving as one of their agents until her demise at the hands of Ogmon priest brother Anthust. In the late 1470s, the succubus Rohini was dispatched to Neverwinter by Aranyes Invadia, with the objective of sowing discord between the Sovereignty and the deity Asmodeus. Tasked with infiltrating the Ogmon priesthood, stealing their spellscar creation methods, and disseminating false information to provoke the Sovereignty into launching a doomed crusade against the Nine Hells, either to annihilate or subjugate the Aboleths. In 1478, Rohini successfully seduced Brother Anthus, infiltrating the Ogmon faith. She later avenged her sister Arunica's death by killing Anthus, capturing the Sovereignty's attention in the process. However, Rohini faced a new challenge when Brother Vartan, a Sovereignty-corrupted priest, sought to dominate her mind using the potent relic known as the Hex Locust. Surviving her encounter with the Symphony of Madness, Rohini emerged with the Hex Locust while retaining her autonomy. The Aboleths persuaded her that serving them was preferable to serving Asmodeus, and that now fused with the Hex Locust, she played a crucial role in their plans. Though initially hesitant, Rohini ultimately agreed to join forces with the Sovereignty. As of 1479, the Abolethic Sovreignty directs its efforts towards obstructing the new Neverwinter movement or exploiting it for their own purposes. Additionally, they push forward with their agenda to seize Gauntlgrim, unleashing poisonous slimes and oozes to assail the Dwergar inhabitants of the ancient city. However, this has provoked the Ashmedai, leading to a conflict between the two factions as they vie for dominance over Gauntlgrim. Other noted Aboleth settlements include Zanhoriloch, a dwarven city situated on an island in Lake Tharut, also serves as the name for the Aboleth colony in the same lake. Located beneath Cormanthor, the settlement and the lake are accessible through a tunnel connecting to Battledale. The dwarves adopted the original drow architecture on the island to suit their preferences. The Aboleth colony, on the other hand, is submerged underwater. The dwarves and Zanhoriloch engaged in fishing, kelp farming, and mining for silver, gold, and iron. Initially avoiding contact with surfacers, they eventually began trading for weapons and metals with the Battledale residents for grain, beef, and wood. Originally built by the drow in 722, the city became dwarven territory after the dwarves repelled the drow assault on their city of Conaglim, following the drows' retreat through a portal to the island. The dwarves then reclaimed the city. In 1372, a drow expedition camped near Lake Thorut while investigating a shipwreck. During their exploration, the Las Hune discovered a mutated drow created by Aboleths. Captured and transformed by an Aboleth named Juran, Balas managed to escape and reunite with his companions. After consulting with Ithun, they discovered the true location of the shipwreck in the Lake of Shadows. Visil'Taphenos Mead Swimmer is a renegade Aboleth savant originally from Lurth Dreer, and resides in Blibdoolpoolp as of 1370. They hail from a lineage of Aboleths with a specialization in dwarven knowledge. Early in their life, they demonstrated exceptional mental abilities required to become an Aboleth savant. Intrigued by the concept of merging intricate Aboleth symbols with dwarven rune lore, it consumed one of the few remaining dwarven rune masters, a high old one of Dumathoin. In doing so, he assimilated the rune master's knowledge, along with aspects of their personality. Recognizing that it couldn't return home, it opted for exile in the city of Blibdoolpoolp, where it established itself as one of the foremost sages of the Underdark. Despite being overlooked by the Kuo-Toa there, Visil'Taphenos engages in the exchange of knowledge, offering dwarven lore and artifacts to individuals of various races. Its expertise spans dwarven architecture, genealogy, languages, and dialects, as well as the history of Shantar, geology, and mycology. Iluun is an Aboleth that established itself in Under Mountain during the early 1490s. Under the leadership of Nulgaloop, the Kuo-Toa were led to worship a petrified Otyugh named Bulbaslop, as orchestrated by Halaster, the Mad Mage. In 1492, Iluun, accompanied by Chul and troglodyte minions, arrived and took control of the grotto where the Kuo-Toa resided. Iluun mentally enslaved the Kuo-Toa, transforming the grotto into its den. Iluun dwells in the grotto alongside his two Chul guards, utilizing a magical projection to interact with visitors. He seeks to expand his empire by enslaving more individuals. Due to past encounters with adventurers, Iluun harbors a fear of them. The maritime endeavors of the inhabitants of Toril are beset by the machinations of creatures and civilizations as ancient as they are terrifying. The wars of aquatic civilizations are fought on a scale almost unfathomable compared to the history of conflict in Faerun. Coastal cities of land dwellers are subject to a unique set of threats from these highly intelligent and predatory beings who constantly hunger for more slaves and wealth from the surface. Despite the dangers, the allure of wealth and adventure attracts many to the seas in the hopes of taming the ancient horrors residing there, and maybe even harnessing their power for themselves.
Somewhere deep in the sea, Aboleths are waiting for me. Aboleth stands on spooky sands and watches the ships that go sailing. Somewhere deep in the sea, Aboleth is watching for me. Mucus makes me fly like birds on high. Then straight to its tentacles I'd go sailing. From far beyond a star, it's near beyond the moon. I know beyond a doubt I'll be enslaved by it soon. We'll meet beyond the shore. You'll dominate my will just as before. Happy you'll be deep in the sea, and never again